Okay. Welcome and greetings and welcome. I hope the weather in your area is not doing what the weather here is doing because it's storming. And while I say that, I know that we are going to just have a great show for you today. I'm so excited because my guest today and I are going to talk about a subject that I have wanted to get into, and that is about healing and health. And the fact that, or the question that, do science and spirituality intersect? This is awesome. So I have with me today Jane Hogan. Welcome, Jane. Welcome to the show.
So happy to be here, Vlin. I love this topic. I'm excited to share it with your audience and just really happy to have this opportunity to do that.
Thank you. I'm excited that you're here because, again, this isn't the kind of conversation that is usual when you're talking about health, wisdom, and wealth. I mean, a lot of people elect to eliminate the spirituality conversation out of it, but we're going to be talking about it. And I want our audience to just make sure that you've got a place to sit at your desk with some pen and paper or just kick back and enjoy. I want to tell you a
Mhm.
little bit about Jane Hogan. She's a functional medicine certified health coach. She is founder and CEO of the ReDesign Wellness Blueprint. She helps people struggling with rheumatoid arthritis, autoimmune disease, and she has a system that can help people to calm their inflammation and joint pain faster and with more clarity so that they can get on with living the life of freedom that they dream of. After healing from suffering herself, helping other people is Jane's passion and purpose, and she's going to be sharing her wisdom with us today. Healing and health, do science and spirituality intersect? Jane, thanks. And once again, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thrilled to be here. Just let's
Awesome.
dive in.
All right. Well, I know people are calling you like the wellness engineer. So tell us a little bit about your story. How did you come to that? And, what was your journey to getting from where you were to where you are today?
Yeah, it's funny because I actually was so far away from the wellness space. I was a civil engineer. I guess I still am a civil engineer, but I worked as a civil engineer for 30 years. I taught at a college, taught civil engineering technology at a college. And, this, I loved it. I loved what I was doing. And in 2016, I had a really stressful year. My mother died suddenly, and there was a lot I had to deal with after that. And anyway, about a year after she died, I started getting this migrating joint pain in 2016. And it would be all over the place, but like really bad. It would be fine one day. The next day, my arm would be in a sling. So it was very unusual because I had been active and healthy and vibrant, strong woman really my whole life. So this happened. Within about 3 months from the start of this pain, I was almost disabled. I could barely walk. I didn't know what was going on, and I started, of course, going consulting Dr. Google, like all of us do, and figured it must be some kind of autoimmune thing. But I thought once I dealt with the stress of, the settling with my mother's estate and so on, it would go away. But it didn't go away. It got worse actually, and so I had to wait to see a rheumatologist where I live. It takes many months to get in to see the rheumatologist. And I was really, really fortunate to have a family doctor who said to me that sometimes there's a connection between food and joint pain, which I thought was a little crazy because I'd never heard of this before. I was in the engineering world. But she said, I really was so desperate. I had nothing to lose. So I thought I'm going to give it a try. So cold turkey, I cut out gluten and dairy and sugar. And within about 5 days, it seemed like within about 5 days, I had about, it felt to me like half the amount of pain. it may not have been that, but it was just such a drastic change that I knew that this was something. And so it just led me down a whole road of using food as medicine to begin with, and then really seeing a whole lot of other connections between lifestyle, and then diving further into mindset and the whole spirituality. So eventually, over the next couple of years, I was so passionate about it. I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, but by the time I saw the rheumatologist, I was like, I'm doing all this other stuff and it's working. So that's the route I want to go. I don't want to take medications if I don't have to, because there are side effects of all medications. And I was doing well, so I carried on. I part-time trained to be a functional medicine certified health coach, just because I really wanted to tell people about this. And I was telling my friends, and sort of wanted to shout it off the rooftops, but it wasn't going over really well at parties. So I thought I need a different platform. So I did this training, really loved it. I was kind of did it as much for myself. I didn't really even know if I was going to be a health coach. But then I was so passionate about it, I decided I left my career. I always say I hung up my hard hat and followed my heart. And so now I'm doing health coaching full time, and I teach. I think at heart, I'm really a teacher, and I really want to teach people. And that's my true passion. And just seeing people change their lives, turn their lives around, and going from victim to being empowered. Because one thing that can really happen when you get an illness is you do feel like a victim. But I've since learned that everything is happening for you.
Yes, yes. I love how you brought that in. Everything is happening for you. There's a
Hmm.
reason that we're supposed to come into the realization that even though we might not know it at the time, some of the things that we might be putting inside of us could be the things that our bodies are saying, hey, wake up. I need you to
Yeah.
listen. We got to
Yeah.
do something about this. Yeah, so great.
Absolutely. When you're in pain, it's your body talking and saying, "Please help me. Please help me. Pay attention." And of course, when I look back, actually, I had things over the years that I kind of ignored. I would get tendonitis and I would get frozen shoulder, and things like that would happen over the years. But I just, I thought, well, it's just, I probably did swam too hard or did different things. And so I never really thought it was my body sort of talking long term, that I was actually getting signals that I needed to pay attention. But yeah, I really feel I'm actually grateful for it now, that it helped me turn my life around and really see, because I also started really examining thoughts as well, and realized that I had a way of thinking about myself, really very self-critical, and a lot of not feeling, even though I seemed very successful on the outside as a civil engineer, smart, and all this. I have beautiful family, all these things were going well, but yet on the inside I had some things that I wasn't hadn't dealt with, and I really needed to deal with them. And I honestly think the more I the more people I talk to, the more I think that these emotional things are some of the initial triggers. And then you kind of get to a tipping point, like I did, where the body can't take any more stress. And then the inflammation begins, and you get these food sensitivities and other things start to happen. But it begins with, like, honestly, it's a stress, but stress can be in a lot of negative emotions are stress.
Hmm.
So where do you want to go from there?
Oh my goodness, where do we want to go? Well, I think so many people, everybody probably has heard of rheumatoid arthritis, but what is it? What is rheumatoid arthritis
Mm.
autoimmune disease? And possibly why are there so many people who are suffering from this disease? What does the science tell us?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is an autoimmune condition. So a lot of people don't realize that. They think it's arthritis, like other arthritis, but it is actually an autoimmune condition. And an autoimmune condition, what happens with autoimmune is that we actually get a leaky gut. So our gut gets inflamed, which can be caused by stress. It can be caused by foods. It can be caused by medications. It can be caused by surgery, really a bunch of different things, lifestyle factors. But for whatever reason or combination of reasons, the intestinal lining starts to break down. And then particles that should never get into the inside of us, which is actually, if you think about it, the whole digestive tract is really outside of us. It flows through us, but it's outside of our sterile environment. And so the immune system gets triggered by these little particles. Now, what it does when it gets triggered, every autoimmune condition, this happens. Something gets triggered or the immune system gets triggered. But how it responds just depends on our own physiology and genes and so on. So with rheumatoid arthritis, the trigger is that whatever particles are leaking in are similar to the synovial fluid around the joints. And so the autoimmune system is confused and it mounts a campaign against the proteins in there, and then the inflammation starts. For someone else, it might be the thyroid, and then they get thyroid problems. For someone else, it might be their skin, and they get psoriasis. So it's really interesting how it can manifest different ways, but really all starts with gut inflammation. But actually, that's even down the road, because before that is the stress, emotions, and so on. But the first thing that needs to get healed when someone has an autoimmune condition is the gut. And pretty much they're saying even most chronic conditions start with inflammation, and probably most of it is tied to the gut.
Very interesting. Very
Mm,
interesting. And, I can totally relate to every aspect that you've brought in because in my late 20s, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis.
really?
And yes, I was surprised too. I was like, wow, I'm healthy, I'm this. And, they kind of say it like, oh, you don't have to worry about it now. And, then they kind of don't have any supporting information either to say, you might want to think about doing this or,
Yeah.
think along these lines. I mean, it wasn't even posed in that manner. And I asked, well, what does that mean? Do I need to do something? Do I need to prepare for something? Is there anything that I can do now that's going to shift what I experience later? Because I know older people that have rheumatoid arthritis, and I don't want to be like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
It's
but I
scary.
never felt as though I got the information in return that actually satisfied my knowledge of how to prevent the spread or adjust so that I could, turn back the hands of time. If I was doing something that was creating it, what was it?
Mhm.
Um, how can someone be proactive when they hear they may be predisposed to the disease? Is there anything?
Yeah, well, on starting with what you eat, but I would even go back further and start with your thoughts. So it's really, I remember years ago being fascinated by a book by Louise Hay called You Can Heal Your Life. And that was long before I had any illness. I just found it really interesting. Even though I was an engineer, I was interested in this stuff, that there could be an emotional connection with illness. I just found this really fascinating. And so I had borrowed the book from the library like years ago. So when I was diagnosed, I ordered the book and found it, right away went to the rheumatoid arthritis section. And so there are emotions associated with rheumatoid arthritis and other illnesses as well. So for rheumatoid arthritis, it's often a feeling of resentment or feeling like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, those kinds of emotions. And that rang true for me. I don't know about you, Velin. Would you say for
Rings
you?
true for me. I was going to say you're reading my book.
It's so
Ah,
funny. And really, a lot of this kind of started for me when I look back on it. I had perfectionist and people pleasing tendencies. And of course, when you do that, you do take the weight of the world on your shoulders because you're trying to please everybody, right? So there was a lot of that when I looked at it. So I really felt like I needed to go back and not go back and review everything, but I needed to clear this so that I could be free of this people pleasing, perfectionism, self judgment, judgment of others, all of these things. Because what we don't realize is it creates stress in our body. Emotional stress creates ultimately creates physical stress in our body, and can, if it goes on long enough, like something that you learn when you're before your age of 7 and you carry it your whole life, then it can actually turn into illness. So I see this time and time again, and it's really interesting whenever I get a new client and whatever they've been diagnosed with. I always look it up and see, well, what are the emotions associated with it? And not everyone really wants to go down that route, but I find it's interesting to know it. And then we can kind of work at some of those emotions that might be behind it, just to first of all become aware of them,
Mhm.
and then do things to change them. And there's numerous ways you can do that. You're a hypnotherapist, so getting at your subconscious mind and changing some of those limiting beliefs or those thoughts that you think over and over again, which are your beliefs. That can help. There's other tools. Affirmations can help. Just the awareness, becoming the observer of your thoughts instead of thinking you are your thoughts. So
Participating.
it's a really great place to start.
Yes, I totally agree. I love that. Um, when we were talking about what we were going to get into conversation about today, um, healing and health, and looking at whether science and spirituality intersect, I think you gave us a little bit of that. And I love that, because, again, we don't realize how much we can allow our outer circumstances to create internal factors that then impact our health.
Mm,
Um, Tell us a little bit more about the science and spirituality connection, where
mm.
you see they may intersect, and how that is so, how that happens.
I absolutely love this question. So thank you so much for bringing it up. And I find it so interesting because I do have this science background. I came from a very sciencey family, no spirituality, pretty much. So, but yet I was interested. I'm actually a Reiki certified, and I did that years ago, long before all. So I've always had this side as well. I've been doing meditation and yoga, intensified a lot more since I've made all these lifestyle changes. But yeah, I always kind of knew, like, they can't be totally separate. Like, how can we have these two things, two big things that seem so important, that cannot be related to each other? But when we come back, so I didn't get trained in quantum physics in engineering, because it's kind of, I don't know if you've heard of quantum physics, but quantum
Mm-hmm.
physics is, looking at subatomic or even big atomic, big particles, or vast space. And what we know is that the physics that we kind of apply to our day-to-day life doesn't work at the subatomic level or at the big space level. And so that's where quantum physics comes in. So quantum physics tells us that everything is energy. Everything is energy. Even us, even our thoughts, the air around us, the food that we eat, the furniture we're sitting on is actually all energy. Because when they look at the very tiniest particle of anything, it's something like 99.9999, I think it's 13 nines% space. And that space isn't empty, it's energy, it's
Right.
potential energy. And
Mm-hmm.
then the other 0.0001% is solid matter. And that's so when you think about that, we are made up of cells, cells are made up of molecules, molecules are made up of atoms. So we are mostly energy. We've just been compressed down enough that it feels solid. We feel solid. So it's kind of a bit of a mind bender when we try to think of ourselves as being energy and not solid like we imagine. But we are. And the interesting thing about it is that emotions are also energy, thoughts are also energy. So we are not separate. We are not separate from any of that. It's all part of who we are. And the other thing is that we are constantly turning over. Our cells are constantly turning over and rebuilding. And so as they rebuild, they are responding. The genetics, the genes in our cells are responding to the environment. That's what they do. They respond to the environment, and the environment is our physical environment. It's our thoughts, it's our feelings, it's the food that we eat, it's the air that we breathe, it's what we put on our skin, it's the relationships we have with people. All of these things are the environment, and that's what our physical body is responding to as it constantly creates itself.
Oh, that was so well said. Beautiful, as a matter of fact. You've drawn such a wonderful visual of the interconnectivity of ourselves as energy and everything else around us. Oh my gosh.
Mm. It is a mind bender.
That's a breather. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. You know, I love how you wove a little bit more about your story into this and how you grew up and the whole science family. That's awesome. And how you brought spirituality in because you had an awareness connecting you to it. There were some questions I would imagine going on in the back of your mind. It's like you asked us, how can these two really big things be separate? When in all actuality, if everything is energy, are they really separate? And I love it. You're right. No, they are not separate. And because of that, people, are coming, I think, even with the shift in the age of bringing in the age of Aquarius, people are really looking at things that they had been exposed to, like all of the songs. I always think of the fifth dimensions, the age of Aquarius, and peace and harmony and love will just overcome everything. And how so many people actually have negated that because they were taught um, that things were solid versus
Mm.
energetic. And can you like share a little bit about, from your perspective, how energy in forms of waves and from sound and music and other things in our lives that really help people to understand the connectedness to energy that they may not see but
Mm.
have to come to know is there?
I'd love to share this quote with you, and I may not be getting it exactly right, but there's a Canadian physicist named Nassim Haramein, I think his name is, and he said, um, "Science is just spiritual, or spirituality is science we haven't found an equation for yet." We also have to remember we're in this particular time space right now, and we just don't have all the answers right now. It doesn't mean that it's not there. If you think back when there's cavemen, electricity was here. They just didn't know how to use it. And it's the same way. We have this energy around us that we can harness, or that we are made of, that we can harness, but we just don't really know how to use it yet. I think I forgot what your question was now, but relating to the science and or spirituality and how we can bring it into our everyday lives, is just remembering that if we are spiritual and if we are energy, then we are constantly creating energy. This cloud particle that I talked about, another part of physics, the quantum physics, is that this this energy potential is always can be created as soon as someone directs attention to it. So you can direct attention to something and then create. And this is kind of interesting because this pulls in the whole like law of attraction stuff and all that. And it's not like I would say it's not really woo woo. It seems like it's woo woo, but it's not. It comes down to it's real science that allows this to happen. And so when we want to physically, if we want to physically change our bodies, well, we're physically going to change anyway. That's part of it. Our cells turn over. But if we want to create in a way that's better than we are now, then we have to think about that and plan for it. And then we make changes, and our brain will also pay attention. As you know, you're probably a studier of the brain, that through our reticular activating system, we will start to pay attention to the things that will draw that to us, will create that reality. So, what I really love about all of this is that this is so empowering. We are in control of our thoughts. We are in control of our environment. We are in control of our emotions. Once we get out of the habit of not being in control, we then can create the environment that will allow healing to happen. So that we just need to provide the environment that our body will be able to thrive in.
Love it. Love it. And, you brought it back to what I think so many people just have not made a connection to just yet. And that is the important role that our thoughts play in the directing of energy.
Yes,
I remember hearing the story of Dr. Joe Dispenza,
love his work.
and yes, I do too. And um, being in a car accident and severing his spinal cord in, I think, 4 places. And the doctors told him he would never walk again, that he would always be, this. And he was like, I don't think so. And how he used exactly everything that you just spoke about, the knowledge of the quantum realm, the knowledge of, the power of your thoughts, to
Mm-hmm.
be able to bring it into the space of visualizing and calling forth and seeing the future vision of his spinal cord coming back together again and healing. And
Mm.
that's not to say that he didn't need help, because he did undergo some things that, helped him to stay so that the healing could occur. Which is why the combination of, beautiful Western medicine and the awesomeness of Eastern medicine, and how they can co-create in such beautiful ways. Yet we've been trained, we've been conditioned, for the most part, many people. I mean, when you think about the millions and millions of people who are sick right now, part of that is the conditioning that we've grown up in, to think that, Eastern medicine's over here and we can't rely on that. And it's not something that you can hold on to, because a lot of it is energy. And then Western medicine, if it's not a pill or something, or a surgery, or, you know, that kind of thing, it's less successful what you're going to be able to do. And I think about this using food as medicine, because we know that things that are alive or have recently been alive have certain nutrients and properties that help to reproduce life. And I know I'm kind of speaking way up here, but I know that you know what I'm talking about. And let's talk about the food as medicine. Why can food be considered medicine for our bodies? What's your take on that?
Well, food is the building block. That's our where our fuel, and that's where all of the all of the nutrients and all of the vitamins and minerals and everything has to come, most of it, from our food. So food really matters. And the other thing is, food is energy too. It's made of energy. So when we have manufactured food that's been highly processed, there's no energy in it. And so it doesn't really serve us really well. A lot of it is chemicals and things our body doesn't know what to do with, and so can cause inflammation. So I mean, I really like to keep the food idea simple. Like, really just eat real food as much as you can, real food that doesn't have an ingredient label. And mostly plants. Plants have so much energy in them and so many vitamins and minerals and nutrients that, we don't even know how they all work together. But what we do know is that people do well when they have a mostly plant-based diet. I wouldn't say entirely, but I'm not just, some people do really well on just plant-based, but some people do really well, I've heard, even on carnivore. So I think when it comes down to it, you need to find out what works for you. Some of it might even come down to your beliefs and your belief system, because what we think, what we believe, makes a big difference to how our body will synthesize it. Because if you think about it, our subconscious mind is really running our body. We don't run our body, our subconscious mind does. The subconscious mind is in charge of the digestive system, the endocrine system, the circulatory system, the reproductive system, the immune system, all of it. So the beliefs that we have there do affect how our systems are going to work. So find what works for you. I always like to say, keep a journal. Keep a journal of, well, the one I use for my clients, I call it the food, mood, poop, and pain journal. So put everything in there, and track how you're doing for a while. How do you respond to, for example, how do you respond to stress? I've got a friend who says whenever she has an argument with her, she's got rheumatoid arthritis as well. Whenever she has an argument with her husband, she gets a flare in her shoulder. But she's seen this happen enough times. So start to notice, how do you respond to your environment? Environment is the food and your lifestyle and your emotions, your all of these things. And coming back to emotions, really, our thoughts matter, but our thoughts matter because our thoughts create emotions in our body, and our emotions are actually vibration. And vibration is what our cells are responding to. So our emotions are what really matter. So when we're thinking about, for example, one of the things I used to do was visualize, being strong and healthy. I imagine myself on a sailboat, hoisting up the sails and going on a hike and doing all these things. But along with that mental picture, I also had the feeling of how good that was going to feel. I didn't even realize it. And I think Joe Dispenza talked about this too. He didn't realize it was the emotion that he was creating that helped him. So these emotions are so important, because this field of our emotions can be measured outside of our body now. And when you think about it, even in conventional medicine, they are using a lot of these tools like MRI machines, right? And EKG machines. These are measuring we are energy. They are using that to do these measurements. So it's interesting to think about it. We don't really think about that very much, but it's there. It's being used because that's part of who we are.
That's awesome. You're absolutely right. Well, Jane, we had a question come in from one of our audience members.
Mm-hmm.
She's saying that she was told RA is an autoimmune and inflammatory disease that's basically incurable. And she's not inclined to just accept that. She's taking medications right now and was told that's all she could do just to slow the disease's progression. She wants to know, is there anything else that she can do, even something that can possibly get her off of the medications?
Mm. Well, I mean, she's got to work with her doctor in terms of the medications. I wouldn't never say like just go off them. I believe I've seen enough stories to know that it is possible to go off them if the symptoms start to reverse. So one thing I didn't say earlier, I want to just mention right here, and I've this question you had was from a woman, and I don't know if you knew that autoimmune diseases it's much higher in women in general. Rheumatoid arthritis, there's much, I forget the percentage, is something like 80% is women. So it's much higher, and I think we are carrying that weight of the world on our shoulders, right? Anyway,
Yeah.
so back to the question. So I would say start paying attention. Do, first of all, have hope, because if you have hope, then you will make progress. So I think this was the first thing that happened to me. I saw this change, and I made a decision. There was some, because I knew then there was something I could do. I made a decision that I was going to do everything in my power to reverse this, no matter what, and I was not going to give up. That was my decision. That's where I came from. And I think that worked for me. So make a decision. Don't kind of go at it half heartedly. Make a decision. Seek out stories of other people that have healed, because you need to have hope. You need to have hope and belief. We talked about the subconscious mind and our belief. So we've had a belief now, and it's hard when you're told by a respected medical doctor that there is no cure. Like, that's a belief that's hard to overcome, because we've got a lot of societal conditioning to believe what the doctors say. So that's why I say seek out other stories, so that you can change that belief to give you a belief that it is possible for you. Then find out what works for you. Start researching some different types of changes in terms of food. Start drinking more water. If you've got stress in your life, sometimes we can't get rid of it, but maybe you can change how you feel about it. So maybe you can start doing something more for relaxation. So maybe it doesn't have to be meditation, but just, breathing and calming down, feeling gratitude, noticing what you feel grateful for. All of these things create a different emotion in your body, right? So you want to come onto those positive emotions as much as you can, because our central nervous system can be in only one of two states: the fight, flight, fear state, or the rest, digest, repair, rejuvenate state. We cannot heal if we're in the fight, flight, fear state. It just doesn't happen. Our mind thinks we've got to run, and so it stops the digestion from working well. It stops the immune system from working well, and all these other systems, our endocrine systems. So we want to get ourselves into that rest, digest, repair state as much as possible. And we do that with our thoughts and our feelings. So there's that. So just start keeping track. Keep track of these things, what changes you're making, and how you're physically responding to them. And also just to know that it's not necessarily going to be all down. There may be like humps and bumps like this. So expect that, and then be kind to yourself for that. I love affirmations because it's sort of like little reminders. I would say to myself, I am a healing machine. I am taking steps every day that are good for my health, and things like that. So I would keep these affirmations going, even when I've had flares, and I still get flares sometimes. If I eat the wrong thing, or if I get into a stressful situation, I will still have a flare, and I have to talk myself out of it. But it's very easy to kind of go down that route of oh, this is coming back and it's never going to go. Instead, I say, I'm having a flare. This is what happened. I've got out of it before, and I can get out of it again. So I just try to use this really positive self-talk, because what I say consciously, all of that goes into the subconscious mind, and that's running the show. So being very aware of what your thoughts are, and because your thoughts affect your feelings, and so being careful of that. And that may not be advice you're going to hear from everyone, but your thoughts do matter.
That was awesome. Thank you for that.
You're
You
welcome.
wrapped up so much good advice in that. Oh my gosh. So now I'm going to get just a little bit more personal and dive into, what does someone like you who's in this space and helping others, what do you eat on any normal day of the week? And actually, what's your favorite healthy dish?
Oh my goodness. Well, I eat, and I would still start with the caveat that what I eat isn't necessarily what's going to be best for the next person. So I have found what works well for me. What works well for me is I do daily intermittent fasting. So I eat all my food. I have a 16 to 18 hour fasting window every day. And the reason I do that is if you think about it, whenever we eat, we are challenging our immune system because the 80% of our immune system or so, I've heard different numbers. I don't really know because I'm not really a doctor, but I've heard 70%, I've heard 80%, whatever. A lot of our immune system is in our gut. So it's like kind of there waiting. So every time you put something down there, it's got to like come to life and see what's going on and check things out and perhaps mount a response. So if we can keep our eating window to a shorter time, then we're giving our system a chance to rest. We're giving our digestive system and the lining of our digestive system a chance to repair. Those cells repair really quickly. They turn over every 3 to 5 days. So the repair can happen pretty quickly. Um, but so I do this intermittent fasting window. So that works really well for me. Kind of like ketosis, although I'm not in ketosis all the time. But I do start my day with a keto coffee. Now, again, coffee doesn't work for everyone. I found it's okay for me. I love my coffee. I get some really good ketones and fats in the morning, and that satiates me. And then I eat a lot of vegetables. Lots of vegetables. For me personally, nightshade vegetables don't work well for me. A lot of people with joint pain do find that they are sensitive to nightshade vegetables. So that's tomatoes, potatoes, peppers, eggplant, and other things, and also spices that are made from them. So that gets a little bit tricky. So curry powder, cayenne pepper, chili powder. So mostly vegetables, but not those nightshade vegetables. Quality proteins. So I eat grass fed beef. In Newfoundland, where I live, there's a lot of moose. So I eat moose. Wild fish, like the grass fed, wild, pastured, just quality proteins. Because the protein, if you think about animals that are on feedlots, they're given food that's no good for them. They live a terrible life. So do you think the meat in those would be quality meat? It's not. Remember, we are energy. We get the energy that comes from those animals as well. There's a doctor called Dr. Stephen Gundry. He says, you eat what you eat ate. So if they're eating crappy food, you're getting the crappy food. So that's kind of what I eat. I very little fruit, mostly berries. Uh, Not a whole lot of fruit because I know that when my blood sugars start to go up and down a lot, then I don't feel so good. So that's what I found works for me. And I'm always like, it changes. It can change over time too. So every once in a while, I'll try something and just experiment. It's all an experiment of one person.
Beautiful. Yes, it is. And, I have learned that we have to experiment. I, with RA, tomatoes and things like that did not do well with me,
Mm,
but I love spices.
mm.
And so, your cayenne pepper and, things like that, some root vegetables, eggplant doesn't bother me. But now I've got food for thought because if I do feel a certain way after a meal, I've got more information that I can kind of check in with. And
Oh, that's
that's
great.
that's so great. That's what we are doing for our audience, is helping them to have this framework of additional information so that as they're experimenting, as they're looking at, when this happens, what did I just do? And just moving through life like that. If I
Mhm.
try this, I haven't had it in a while. If I try this, let me be a little bit conscious of what it is that I might feel afterwards. That was so good, Jane. Thank you for that.
Oh, you're
And at
welcome. Oh, I just want
sure,
to say another little thing too is once you get inflammation under control, like this is kind of a lifestyle. I think in the beginning I thought, well, I'll cut it out for a little while till I get better and then I'll go back. It is a lifestyle change, but there's tons of delicious foods. But the other thing is once you get the inflammation under control, then it doesn't have to be 100%, right? You can have something once in a while, but the main thing is to enjoy it, so and not beat yourself up over it, that kind of thing, like, oh, I shouldn't be having this piece of cake or whatever it is. You just make the decision, okay, I'm gonna have it, I'm gonna enjoy it while I'm having it, and maybe I might have some pain afterwards, and that might change your decision on whether it is something you want to enjoy to have another time. But our thoughts, the thoughts we have while we're eating food, matter as well. Our digestion actually begins in the brain, I always say. So feeling good and feeling relaxed while you're eating and feeling good about what you're eating and appreciative of what you're eating helps you digest it better. So that's something else to think about.
that really is. And thank you so much. I mean, I was going to ask you to, as we're bringing our conversation to a close, is there some wisdom that you believe important to share with our audience and, leave us with some something that's going to be a positive impact? And you just did. So do you have something else?
Well, Vila, there's been so much we've talked about here, and I know it might feel a little overwhelming for people. Like, okay, now how can I do all this stuff? If you just think about put good in, and just think, am I putting good in? Good thoughts, good air, good food, good feelings, good people around me. Just coming at it from that perspective is this good for me? Is this something that makes me feel good? Then that kind of simplifies things a little bit. And maybe it might take a little while for you to tune in to what is good for me. But just think about that. Put good in. Just put good in.
Oh, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for that. Oh, I love it. And I want our audience to know that there is wisdom like this. There is the heartfelt delivery of those like Jane who come on the show, because Jane's goal was to make sure that you had the information that she has within her to share. You
Mhm.
heard in her introduction, that's one of her passions in life right now. And that's one of mine as well. And if you like what we talked about, if you have questions about it, put a comment below the video. If you'd like to hear more on the subject, put a comment on the under the video below. And remember to share. If you know somebody who has this challenge, please share the video with them. Let them know that there are solutions, that there are people out there who care and are doing things differently than the traditional medical community. And not so much um, differently in their approach to solutions as much as the differences in the part of who you are, really wanting to understand how they can help you, the individual, because we are the energy that Jane spoke about, and we are the nuances that make us individuals. And it sometimes takes a bit to get to the individual root of what can improve your health and improve your life, improve your wealth. And that comes from partaking of the wisdom of those who are here to share. And if you are a health and wisdom or wealth practitioner and you'd like to share your knowledge and expertise with our audience to be in this kind of a conversation, reach out to me, PM me, message me on Facebook, LinkedIn, email me. You can reach me at dlyn@p3academy.com and let's connect. Okay, everyone, Jane, thank you once again for all of this amazingness that you brought with you today. I so appreciate you, and I thank you on behalf of our audience.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for having this platform to give people hope, because then they can make these changes and really turn their lives around and be the people they were meant to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, everyone, we've got some exciting things coming up in future episodes, so stay tuned, turn on your notifications, subscribe on YouTube, and please, again, share. So until next time, be well, live, love, be a bigger positive impact in your world. Bye for now.